Welcome everyone to the March Trading and Financial Tech Super Fair. To give you a really quick insight into the fair today, we are going to be having a 40-minute panel session with a range of different grads from the top trading firms from across Australia, which is very exciting. And then following in from there, we've got several top employers that are doing a presentation talking about their programs. Before I get stuck into the nuts and bolts of things, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land in which we meet today, wherever you are, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So it's with all of that in mind that I am going to introduce our fantastic graduate panel. Very exciting. So we do have, to kick off, we've got Sanchit from Citadel. Welcome, Sanchit. Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, thanks so much.
We also have Darcy joining us from IMC. Thanks for jumping on, Darcy.
All right, thanks for that, Jeremy.
And we've got Sam Gray from Optiva.
Yeah, hey everyone. Super exciting to be here. Yeah.
Fantastic. And last but not least, we have Calvin joining from SIG. Thanks for jumping on, Calvin.
Hey everyone, glad to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for joining us. Before we get stuck into it, one thing I want to clarify is that this is the first time that we've actually hosted a panel just with graduates with us today. So it's a very exciting time, and it's going to be, most importantly, quite a good insight for yourselves, the audience, the students who are watching this, to get an insight into what it might be like to actually become a graduate or an intern at one of these fantastic trading firms. So with this in mind, we do have a sort of set out set of questions that I'm going to be asking the panel. But if we do have time at the end, please do feel free as we go through to pop questions into the chat at the bottom. And if we get time, we'll be passing those out to the grads that we have with us today. So without further ado, we're just going to start off with a very simple and straightforward question. So please, would you introduce yourself? Tell us how long you've been with your employer and what your employer primarily does. So of course, we know your trading firms, but what is the specialty? So in no particular order, we'll start off with Sanchit. Would you mind giving us a bit of an insight?
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Sanchit. I graduated from UNSW last year, and I've been with Citadel since July, so it's been about 8 months now. So Citadel Securities is a global market making firm across a range of assets, very global as well. But in Sydney, we focus on options market making and a couple of businesses in the APAC region.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sanchit. Darcy, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hey guys, I'm Darcy. I'm a first year here at IMC. I studied physics and maths when I was at university, and then came to IMC as soon as I finished. As for IMC itself, we're also an international market making combination, as the name suggests. We also do a few other things. So we trade a few other products like ETFs and the stock itself, some of them market making, some of them with the view of position taking, and some of them with the view of algorithmic trading. So a bit of a broad.
Fantastic. Thanks, Darcy. And Sam, would you be able to give us an insight around yourself and how long you've been at Optiva?
Yeah. So hey everyone, I'm Sam. I've been at Optiva for just over a touch over 2 years. Specifically, I work in one of the 3 trading teams called Delta One, and I joined Optiva straight out of university where I studied electrical and computer engineering. Like the other firms, we're a global market making firm with focuses on Delta One options and single stock options, and we provide constant liquidity across the globe from multiple offices. The team I trade in specifically focuses on stocks, ETFs, and futures.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sam. Calvin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Calvin. I graduated last year from the University of Sydney, mechatronics engineering and computer science degree. I've been a grad for about 2 months now, so started in January, but I also did a summer internship with SIG over the 2020 and 2021 summer. Just like the other firms, we are a market maker all around the world, options, ETFs. We'll do some, futures and stock trading as well. And, a little bit of algos, a little bit of everything. Primarily our offices are in US. We've got offices in Ireland and of course Sydney. So in Sydney, we're mainly trading as the other guys.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Calvin. Really appreciate it. So essentially, I'm going to be going around in a bit of an order, and we want to get an understanding from all of you why you picked your current employer. We all know that you're all in very similar spaces, but we want to know what was it that was the major draw card to yourselves to your particular employer. So this time we'll start off with yourself, Darcy. You're able to give us an insight.
Yeah, sure. So before I came to IMC when I was at university, through uni, I got set up with another trading firm on a scholarship there. So that's kind of how I got started in trading in the first place. It wasn't really anything I was familiar with before. And through working at that place, I heard about a few other shops as well. And so when I was graduating, I'd already had a bit of an insight from the inside of people who'd worked there in the past, or even just like trading against them to see what different firms were like. And so then when it came to the interview stage, I had a pretty short list of places that I wanted to apply to and that I was serious about. And I think it was mostly just the people that I talked to. I mean, it's no secret, it's a very capable industry. No matter where you go, you're going to meet very smart people, but I just found I got along with these people better. And, for me, like enjoying my work is a big part of it. So it was an easy pick for me.
Thanks, Darcy. Kind of highlighting the importance of like a good culture fit for you. So thanks for the insight. Sam, would you be able to give us an insight why you chose Optiva to kick off your career?
Yeah. So I think there were sort of two main points that made me choose to go to Optiva. The first point was before coming into the office, you sort of see all these different trading firms and you don't have a great idea of how to differentiate them. Coming through and talking to people, I got a really good idea of what Optiva's culture was like, and that made me really interested in working at the company. Another big plus for me was just the training program that they had. So for the first 6 months, you're sort of just focusing on upskilling yourself and actually becoming a really competent trader. And then you get given more responsibility after that. So that was a really exciting prospect for me as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sam. Calvin, tell us why you chose SIG to start off your career.
So when I was applying for graduate jobs and interns a few years ago, obviously, applied to a few different shops, as everyone does. But what SIG did that made them stand out to me was they had a really good culture, obviously. And people are friendly, people are laid back, people you can really spin a yarn with. And it's not just like the graduates are friendly, right? Every single person in the office that I spoke to, you could spin a yarn with. Even up to the most senior people, like the head of trading. 2 weeks ago, I remember he's a big Philly fan, like a Philadelphia Sixers fan, and we were talking about the Ben Simmons trade. And this was with like the guy who's the boss of the boss. He's the top guy. So really, that really stood out to me, was just how friendly people were, how approachable people were at SIG. And yeah, that's mainly why I chose them.
Fantastic, Calvin. Really cool anecdote. Appreciate that. Sanchit, why did you go with Citadel?
Yeah, so I think everyone's talked about culture, and the same story with Citadel. But I think two things I would say about Citadel, which kind of stood out to me when I was choosing between different firms. First is the global nature. So the amount of offices that Citadel has around the world is pretty crazy. And the opportunity you get to travel to these offices is also very good. So for example, I did my training in New York while Sydney was in lockdown. So got flown over to New York, did 3 months there, and came back to Sydney late last year. And the second thing is Citadel is a huge company in America. It's got a lot of resources, but in Sydney, we're still comparatively small. So it gave a startup feel, but you had the resources behind you of a big company. And smaller team, you get more involved, more responsibility straight away. And you're kind of sitting next to your boss, or like the boss of APAC as well. So the smaller team, more intimate, I guess, kind of added to the experience.
That's amazing, Sanchit. So pretty much the theme that I'm hearing across all panelists today, we're looking at a flat structure in terms of your management team and your ability to learn from and talk to managers that could be way up the line and directors and whatnot. You've also got a fantastic culture and how much you blend and I guess get along with your potential future colleagues and your training programs. Super important as well. So I'm sure everyone has their own sort of unique perks to some particular extent, but for all of the students that are with us today, keep in mind that those are the main things that were kind of just said in relation to why these particular organizations were chosen. thank you everyone for giving us that insight. The next sort of aspect that I wanted to explore with you all was kind of based around essentially what a typical day in the life looks like in your role. Now, for a lot of students that are here with us today, it's one thing to study this at university, but it's something else completely different to get an understanding of what you're doing at particular times throughout your day. Like, what are you doing at lunchtime? What are you doing in the afternoon? And so on and so forth. So without going into too much detail, just to give us a bit of an indication around, what does your day look like? Do you chat with other grads? Do you have opportunities to socialize, or, what does that essentially look like? So Sam, I wouldn't mind if I could kick it to you to start us off and give us a bit of an insight.
Yeah, sure. I'll keep it like kind of broad because every single day is quite different, just depending on what's going on in the markets, what projects you're working on. So yeah, that's the first part. It's very dynamic. It changes depending on what's going on. And I work within like a very tight team of about 4 traders and devs. So we work all the time together. We're constantly in communication. I'd be sort of getting in, depending on which market you're working in. I'd be getting in around 9:30, catching up on some projects, reading through the news. And then by about 11 would be going into the market. Throughout the day, if the conditions are busy, you'll sort of be focusing on the trades that you're doing, potentially diving into important events that are happening on the day. Or if it's a little bit more quiet, then I'll actually go to working on some projects. So maybe there's a new system that we're trying to set up, or there's a new market that we're trying to trade. I'll start doing some of that work, which is more sort of deep thinking, trying to go through data sets, that sort of stuff. Have a small break for lunch. And then by around about 6 or 7, depending on the spot, you're sort of wrapping up for the day, going through your admin procedures, writing a reflection on how your team did. And then maybe you could sort of go home then, or if you wanted to go work on some projects, you might do that for another hour or so.
Amazing. Thanks, Sam. So you actually, just a quick follow-up, you reflect every day on how yourself and your team performed throughout the day.
Yeah, so it's that's just a sort of continuous feedback loop in trading. So you always just want to be reflecting on what you think you did well, trying to back that up with evidence throughout the day, and then what we can improve for the next day. All of these in these markets, we're wanting to try and like keep innovating and moving fast. So there's just sort of the constant reflection process.
Absolutely. Keeps you performing at your best. Thanks for that, Sam. That was great. Calvin, what does your day in life look like?
Hey, yeah. So, we'll come into the office, grab breakfast, have a coffee, probably enjoy a view of the harbor. You can see the bridge from the kitchen. And then the first thing in the morning, as a grad, usually we'll have a class. So class can take the form of, a few different things. Like we'll go, lectures for finance theory, or we'll have mock trading, which is kind of like trading simulation. And we also have poker lessons. So as you guys may or may not know, SIG is really big on games and especially poker. All the founders really love poker, and as a result, they teach it to us in the morning, which is really fun. Once class is over, we'll be doing desk work, just like Sam says. I personally work in a pretty small desk. There's about 4 of us, but what's unique is that we also have communication with other teams, like the research guys, the tech guys, the devs, and the quants as well. So even though our desk is pretty small, we are working closely with a bunch of different teams throughout the day. So personally for me, I'll be doing projects for the desk. Can't really go into too specific, but and if there's any downtime, we're free to kind of walk around to other desks, socialize if they're not busy. And like I said, SIG's got a pretty big games culture. So occasionally, if it's a quiet day, we'll be playing card games or something with another desk. So yeah, it's a really, really, really good balance here at SIG.
That sounds great, Calvin. I did hear about the story of your founders in that they were poker players and then they bought a seat at the New York Stock Exchange and kind of started from there, which was super interesting for anyone that's interested in SIG's founder story. But yeah, thanks for sharing that, Calvin. Sanchit, would you mind telling us a little bit about a day in the life at Citadel?
So I trade Hong Kong. So Hong Kong markets open a bit later at 12:30. So usually get in at around 10 o'clock, kind of catch up on what happened overnight in America. Also sometimes doing some projects with some American guys. So have a Zoom call with them, just catch up on what they've been doing, catch up on what we've been doing and how we can help them out. They can help us out. Yeah, catch up on news, have a chat with your colleagues, talk about what you want to do when you get into the open. So markets are from 12:30 to 3 o'clock. That's first morning session. So you're kind of stuck to the screen then, trading actively, usually quite busy, so you don't have time to do other stuff. And then 3 to 4 is usually lunchtime. Usually it's like a break, detach from the computer, go to the kitchen and have a chat, have some more food if you want, or just play chess. It's become a bit of a thing nowadays in the office. And then 4 to 7 is afternoon session, quite quiet usually. So sometimes you can get some project work in as well. But as a grad, you probably want to be focused on the markets more, learn how to trade properly. And then after markets close, you kind of just work on some projects on the side, or anything cool you found in the market you want to look at further, kind of understand what you might be doing tomorrow morning. It's kind of up to you to do what you want to do after that.
That's great, Sanchit. Darcy, would you be able to give us an insight around what your day in life looks like?
Yeah, sure. So I'd say it's pretty similar to some of the stuff the other guys have said. Like Sanchit, I also trade Hong Kong, so the hours there are pretty similar. It depends on desk to desk, but for me, I'm quite split between trading and research. I mean, at the moment with the current volatility, I'm trying to focus on trading, but to give like an amalgam of what maybe the average day would look like between a heavy trading day and a heavy research day, I'd probably get in about 10 o'clock and do what we call just like the morning setup. So that's making sure that all of our systems are prepped, making sure all of like the compliance jobs and all that kind of stuff overnight are looking fine and healthy, and then take the time to read like the news, as the other guys have said, so that you've caught up on the market, and then kind of plan how I'm going to fit my research in for the rest of the day. So usually it's simulation-based stuff. And my usual workflow is like I'll check in on the jobs that I ran the night before while I was at home or whatever, and then see if there's any follow-up stuff that's interesting or whether I'm going to analyze that stuff more that day. So if there is some stuff that's interesting, I'll probably kick off some more sims to run through the trading day, and that will bring us into around open. As the other guys have said, it's like quite busy, particularly early on in trading. That's where a lot of the volume goes through. So initially in your day, you'll be spending almost all of your time looking at trades. And then I'd say as the day goes on, you kind of transition out to looking at other stuff. So it could be, real researchy projects that really are quite a way off of production, or it could be stuff that's tinkering with what you've already got there, but you might want to make some adjustments given some stuff you've spotted over the last couple of days. There's usually a few meetings in there, and we do like a bit of a lunch cartel. So like with a decent sized team, one guy can stick around while a couple other people jump off and get some lunch. I usually go for a walk, like clear my head a little bit around 3, just around Sydney, like maybe down to the Opera House or something. And then, yeah, a bit more of the same in the afternoon. We finish, as Sanchit said, at 7. So there's an office dinner. I'll usually grab a bit of that, maybe tidy off a few things before I go, and then that will be me for the day.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Darcy. Sounds like you've got a solid routine down with your walks down to the Opera House, which is nice.
Yeah, I love them.
So essentially from here, I really wanted to give students a bit of a unique perspective into, I guess, all of your organizations. So from a student perspective, or you guys were all students, hopefully not too long ago, I want you to tell me something that is really common at your organization that stands out to you or you didn't expect. So, you've gone in with this preconceived understanding of what it's like to be at a trading firm or a market maker, and then you're surprised by something. Calvin, if you don't mind, I'll pass it to you first to give everyone a bit of an insight around something that's unexpected.
Sure. So just for a little bit of context, I graduated as an engineer, so with an engineering degree. So I pretty much had no finance knowledge within uni before I started at SIG. So the one thing that really surprised me about SIG was their focus on education and how they didn't really expect you to know anything coming into it, right? So firstly, we've got a dedicated education program where we learn pretty much for a year and a half. That's going to class, learning about, from the ground up, starting from what is a stock and ending with Well, I don't know yet, so I'm still going through it. Secondly, everyone here is willing to teach you. This kind of goes back to the cult, like how good the culture is at SIG, is that you can talk to anyone and they're willing to teach you what you don't know. So there's pretty much no stupid questions. You can go up to someone and say, hey, what's this? They're not gonna like berate you for not knowing something. You're not gonna get criticized or anything. They're just gonna gladly answer your question, and everyone's better for it, because it's better to ask now rather than assume you're right and get it wrong later, right? So that was something that really stood out to me during my internship as well, is just how much focus there is on making sure that make sure that myself was the best trader that I could be.
That's fantastic, Calvin. Really appreciate that. And Sanchit, would you be able to tell us something that was unexpected on your end when you joined Citadel?
Yeah, sure. I'll probably talk about two things here. So as I said before, I was sent to New York for training with other grads. The one thing that kind of took surprised me was the caliber of talent. For example, we had I think 5 or 6 international maths Olympiads, and like half of them are gold medals. Just really, really intelligent, really, really sharp people that you work with, and you can learn from them as well. I think I probably learned more from the grads. I probably learned as much from the grads as I did from the trainers in New York. Just that kind of support network from your grads around you, and the amount of knowledge they have is insane. I think that goes everywhere as well, just within like the higher ups, just throughout all businesses in Citadel Securities as well. And second is probably the resources that Citadel has. They're going to go above and beyond for you to make your experience a lot better. For example, I was in New York. I was supposed to be in New York till mid-October, but then Scott Morrison announced that if you stay 2 weeks longer, there's no more quarantine left. So I was supposed to fly out on the Sunday. Saturday night, I get a call from my boss being like, do you want to stay for 2 weeks longer? We'll book your hotel and everything. So, and then that was all set. So Sunday morning, I was back to New York, had a hotel booked for 2 weeks more, and had a whole seat organized for me in the New York office. So the small things like that really add up and make your experience a lot better.
It's amazing, Sanchit. So good to hear that, Citadel was very welcoming and made sure that you felt like a part of the team. It's really awesome. Darcy, what was unexpected for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with the stuff that the other guys have said, but just for the sake of a bit of diversity, I'll maybe try think of something else as well. So I think one thing that really surprised me when I started was their willingness to give me quite a bit of responsibility really early on. I mean, like the other guys, like you come in as a grad and you might not have a huge amount of experience with trading. I did a little bit of part-time stuff before I started, and then within 2 months, some stuff had gone well, and I basically got put in a position where I could have a lot of impact on the future of a really big strategy at IMC. And I was pretty much free to explore what I wanted to explore, while keeping up with the trading obligations that I had. I had a lot of license to just explore my own ideas. And I guess I was expecting that at some point, but I was really surprised with how quickly it all kind of fell through, which was awesome. And I think maybe the other one is I was surprised by the diversity of personality types that you get. Coming from quite a STEMmy background, it's quite monotone in the type of people that you get often. And I just found there are a lot of people where I'd be like, look, you'd meet them and you'd be like, that's the 1% of people you're really surprised that they're a computer science graduate or an electrical engineer or a physics graduate or whatever. Those 1%ers tended to be there quite a bit. So yeah, it was statistically significant enough that it was pretty surprising.
That's great, Darcy. Really good to hear about the increased responsibility in the early days as well. I know that's something that you need a lot of trust in order to give that to a graduate. So that's awesome. Sam, do you mind telling us what was unexpected at Optiva?
Yeah, I'd say the main one is the sort of flat structure that ties in with what Darcy was talking about as well. So you're sort of working in a team where someone on the floor might have been working there for 8 years and you're getting to work and share opinions with them, even though you've only been there for a couple of months. And that's probably a massive advantage. If you're looking at things from a fresh pair of eyes, it can actually just help pick out things that are maybe they haven't considered because they've been doing it a certain way for such a long period of time. So that flat structure, and then also just rapid opportunity to have responsibility on the floor. If you show that you're willing to do something and you have the competency to do it, they're going to be able to give you those opportunities to actually just have your own spot and make your mark.
Fantastic, Sam. Thanks for that. So we are getting to the tail end of the pre-prepared questions. The final one that I wanted to roll out for everyone was essentially, why should other students apply to your organization? Obviously, you've experienced it firsthand, and you'll probably have the best insight possible, more than anyone else at your organization, as to what the key benefits are for another graduate to join. So with this in mind, Sanchit, I might throw it to yourself first, but just as like a bit of an insight, if you go back in time and obviously make the same decision again, would you do that? And what does that sort of look like?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest hesitation I had when I was applying and decided on choosing Citadel was that's a small company in Sydney. Like IMC, Optiva, Citadel, a lot bigger than us in terms of people in Sydney. But it turns out that's actually been like the biggest benefit of joining Citadel as well. The small team, as I've mentioned before, has a flat structure. You get a lot more exposure straight away. For example, one thing I was kind of struggling about was we don't have a trainer in Sydney as such. We don't have like an education director in Sydney. They're in New York, which is why we get sent there. That I might not be having an adequate training program here, but I think I've had probably the best training program I can imagine of, just because as the only grad there, everyone around you is there to support you, and you're trading straight away. So I was trading 2 months into like when I started, and now I'm trading on 4 symbols, which is it's a steep curve, but being chucked into the deep end is sometimes a really good opportunity. And I think that's what Citadel can provide in Sydney, especially. There's always support if you struggle with that, with the education directors in New York and everyone in Sydney office as well. So I think that's probably the biggest advantage of Citadel in Sydney. I would say just like the small team, being able to get right in there from day one and getting great exposure.
That's great, Sanchit. Really, really good insights there. And I think, it kind of summarizes the value proposition of Citadel quite succinctly for Sydney, especially. Darcy, what would you have to say about someone else looking to join IMC?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been in a similar position where I have been at another company, and I had the option to leave, and I was kind of weighing up the same things. And I think like I probably tell people to like figure out what they think matters to them. That's probably the main thing. But like to me personally, I think it's really difficult to find a group of people with this much intelligence. But you're going to find, like in trading, it's just a very intelligent space, and it's also like completely aside from work, it's really difficult to find a group of people that you get along with really well, and that you can feel like comfortable around, and where you actually like enjoy seeing them on a regular basis. And I haven't found another place that has had this level of both. Like maybe my best mates who are outside of work, I might get along with just as well, and maybe some of like the smartest people I met at uni are similarly smart, but I've never found like the Venn diagram meet like this before. So for me, like they're the two main value propositions. So if I was making the decision again, I'd definitely make the same one.
That's awesome, Darcy. I guess really good advice for students that are watching. Find out what's important to you and go and chase that, no matter where that ends up. That's great. Sam, would you mind giving us a bit of an insight around why some other students should apply to Optiva?
Yep. So sort of leaning back on my previous stuff I've discussed, it's just a massive opportunity to accelerate your growth quickly and work with a team, amazing group of people at the cutting edge of finance. So it's just, you get to work on really challenging problems every single day and try and solve stuff that maybe no one else has considered before. And then this comes with great perks. So you're in a team full of like-minded people. You get breakfast, lunch, and sometimes dinner. And you've got the opportunity to go overseas, work overseas at one of the other locations as well.
Amazing. Thanks, Sam. Calvin, bit of an insight from you for other students who are looking to join SIG?
Yeah, sure. So I'm sure there are quite a few of you in the audience who probably don't have that much background in finance, just like I did when I was a graduate. So one thing that really, I'm going to reiterate it again, but one thing that really stood out to me was SIG's focus on education, right? A really dedicated education program where they assume you don't have any knowledge. They'll teach you from the ground up. And yeah, of course, other things like everyone's really smart, right? Trading is a really smart space. You're going to be around lots of smart people, both graduates and those senior to you. And what really makes it unique here, I think, is those really smart people are also really willing to teach you. So, you know, you're kind of constantly absorbing new knowledge from just by being around in the office, which was really cool. And yeah, like I said before, you don't really need that much finance knowledge to start.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Calvin. And so from here, there are a few other questions that have sort of come through in the chat and things like that. But what I might do is I might pose these questions to the entire panel. And if someone feels like they have an answer to that, just feel free to go ahead and answer it. But the first one is, I wanted to know, obviously you're all successful candidates that have turned into graduates. Do you have any sort of advice around the application process or the recruitment process that you can give to another student that's looking to start at your organization?
I guess like I've got a little bit, like I've started doing some interviewing here, so I can speak to kind of what I find interesting. I'd say it's always good to see, like, there's lots of smart candidates, but it's always good to see someone who's tried to start solving real problems, not just manufactured ones, which is a little bit what university can be like. So if you do want to stand out, I mean, obviously, like the first thing is to get the kind of knowledge that you need to succeed in an industry like this. But I'd also just I'd go find the problem that you find the most interesting and pursue it and try get like, even if it's a small amount of improvement on something or like a bit of a result, I do that because that's a lot more interesting than someone who can solve manufactured problems very well, purely because real problems are a lot messier and it's not always as clear what the right solution is going to be.
Fantastic advice, Darcy. Anyone else have any other sort of tips around the application process or what you should be thinking of if you're looking to apply at one of your organizations?
Yeah, one of the things I'd point out is we're not like, at least at Optiva, we're not specifically looking that you've been doing a whole bunch of trading by yourself. Showing a genuine interest in finance is a good thing, but what we want to see is that you're really passionate and driven about the things that you care about, whether that's other hobbies or a sport or your academics. If you're showing a keen interest and you are showing a genuine interest in the trading problem, that's something that we really look for as well.
Amazing, Sam. Thanks for that. I'm going to pull out another question. I'll paraphrase here, but the idea is, what other skills and knowledge do you need to increase your competency to obviously get a role at one of your organizations? So obviously you've got your degree, but is there anything else that you should just know about? Obviously a keen interest in finance, but interested to hear your thoughts on that.
I can go.
Sure.
So Optiva isn't specifically looking that you've done a specific degree. The sort of things that they're looking for is that analytical mindset, and then also doing stuff like data science is another sort of really interesting thing that you could show and like improve your skills on, and just working on like solving challenging problems in a fast-paced environment. So whether that's some competitions that you do or anything like that, that can actually be a massive advantage as well.
Just one thing I'd add on that, I guess. I know at Citadel, we have a spectrum of traders, so not all traders might be quantitative, not all traders might be macro focused, but I guess finding what you're interested in. So if you're interested in data science side, kind of focus on that. But if you don't want to do the more coding side, you can always focus on like more macro stuff or understanding, the fundamentals of companies and how that affects options and stuff. Like there's always place for like any skill set in the team. So I wouldn't treat traders as all quantitative as all as not quantitative, like the spectrum, and you kind of fall anywhere on that based on your interests. and you kind of want to focus on what you like, I guess.
Yeah, I could add something too. So obviously, like the other guys, we're not really looking for a specific degree or a specific background or anything like that. Obviously, you do need to have like some basic math knowledge, like probability and stuff like that. But what specifically is unique to SIG is that, like I said before, we've got a big gaming culture, right? Our founders were poker players. They got to see it at the New York, they want to see the New York Stock Exchange. So if you can show an interest in gaming in particular, like strategy games or competitive strategy games, along those lines, then yeah, that's something you could look into beforehand.
I suppose maybe just to add a little bit to particularly what Calvin and Sanchit mentioned there. From my perspective, I completely agree with what they've said, that, there's particularly Sanchit there's different skill sets for different people with different interests. One trap I maybe found myself falling into a little bit when I was a soon-to-be grad was I tried to make everything trading related when I was trying to cultivate these skills. If you want to learn ML, you'll learn ML for trading. Or if I want to learn positional trading, I'll go out and just trade stocks straight away. Whereas you might have heard a little bit so far already, like poker has a lot of analogous concepts. Similarly, doing ML on something that's not necessarily based on finance is interesting as well. So it doesn't have to be all about you becoming the best trader possible. I'd say pick skills that you find are interesting and you think can be applicable, and then try to become well-rounded in them, however you do that.
Fantastic advice. Thanks for that, Darcy. So we only have a couple of minutes left. So I'm just going to pose one last question to the panel. Essentially, what is your top tip for a graduate that's just started at your organization? What's one thing you'd tell them to give them the best start? Posing that to anyone who would like to jump on it. We've only got 2 minutes left.
I got a bit of really good advice. I did some part-time work just before I started, and then I kind of started our graduate program, which is a class session similar to Calvin. And the best advice I got was ask the question why a lot, more than you would maybe do by default. I guess there's two reasons. One, it helps you really engage and not take things for granted. But I think there's already enough going on when you're trying to learn in these really complicated spaces, and you can focus on the who, the what, the when, the where, all that kind of stuff. But why is a really simple, good way to bring it together most of the time. So I'd start with that.
That's great, Darcy. Really appreciate that one. Anyone else? We've got 1 more minute, so probably one more response.
Along similar lines, when you're first starting out, don't be afraid of making mistakes, because you're a new graduate. You're going to make tons of mistakes. You're going to look like an idiot sometimes. But what you need to make sure that you're doing is that you're asking questions, and that you're showing that you're willing and that you're capable of learning. And if you can do that, you'll do really well.
Fantastic. Great. Well, everyone, let's all appreciate all of our fantastic trading panelists that have joined us today. Thank you so much to Sanchit, Darcy, Sam, and Calvin. Honestly, all the best, guys, with the rest of your graduate program and in your future careers. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk about your experience and to hopefully give some of that knowledge to some of the students that have joined us today.